Welcome to Kidmissing TV. There won't be a poster for this one. This is one of my... It's a historic case, but it's also an expose. Well, it's not really an expose either. It's more of a, if we forget the past, we're doomed to repeat it kind of thing. This is the Chowchilla Kidnappings. I'm going to show you a picture here. Oops. That's where they were buried. Okay. And as you can see, the roof was starting to collapse. Anyway. Oh, shoot. July 15th, 1976. A school bus, with 26 children ages 5 to 14 were stopped on the road by three men. James Schoenfeld, Richard Schoenfeld, and Frederick Woods. There they are. Nice guys, yeah. They were armed. They took them in a dark van to a quarry in Livermore, California. Anyway. And were transferred from that van to an underground truck, which they then shoveled dirt on top of. They had a gun. The kidnappers wanted ransom. Well, unfortunately for them, the kids escaped, and the driver, before the ransom demand. The bus driver's name was Frank Edward Ray, but he went by Ed. The school was Dairyland Elementary School. The children had spent the day on a summer field trip to the Chowchilla Fairgrounds swimming pool. It was about 4 p.m. when when a van drove into the bus's path, forcing Ed to stop. They had taken the time to insulate the inside of the transport vehicle um, with soundproofing. They painted the windows black. And took them to the California rock and gravel quarry, like I said, in Livermore. Um, they put a small amount of food, what's been described as a pit toilet, basically a hole in the ground to do your business, several mattresses, and they wrote the name and age of every child on a Jack in the Box hamburger wrapper. Jack in the Box, I think more so out west, is a popular um, fast food restaurant, as is In and Out. Once they got them inside, they covered, because what they did is they had them climb down a ladder through a hatch into the mostly buried truck trailer. And what they did was they put a heavy piece of sheet metal over it, two 100-pound industrial batteries, and dirt. How they escaped, I never know. Here's some of them after they escaped. Ray and the oldest children stacked the mattresses to reach the hatch. "14-year-old Michael Marshall managed to wedge a piece of wood into the opening that Ray had managed to make in the hatch." I can't read what that says. Oh, he lifted it a little ways. And they used the wedge to push the sheet metal and the batteries aside, and they dug away the remainder of the dirt and stuff. And 16 hours later, they climbed out of the bunker. They went to the quarry guard shack near Shadow Cliffs Regional Park. I don't know how far that was for them to walk. Alameda County sheriffs arrived and took them to Santa Rita Jail, the nearest facility with medical staff. Jail doctors and EMTs examined them, treated them, gave them food and water, while the sheriff took down statements and descriptions of the kidnappers. They then were returned to their families in Chowchilla. By the way, Livermore was 110 miles from Chowchilla. And in a bit of lovely irony, one of the reasons that they were not able to make their ransom demand was because the phone lines to the police department were jammed with worried parents, press, and they couldn't get through. $5 million at that time would be the equivalent of 27,600,000 in 2024. And I know we're in 2025, but it isn't that much different. So the morons fell asleep. They woke up, saw the news that their victims had escaped. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, local law enforcement and the FBI immediately began investigating Frederick Woods IV, son of Frederick Woods III, owner of, guess what? California Rock and Gravel. And he had full access. And his two cohorts, James and Richard Schoenfeld, ages 24 and 22, had been previously convicted of motor vehicle theft, for which they were sentenced to probation. Well, him and his two friends. So that's how they figured out who the other two were. Oh, these guys weren't very smart, thank the good Lord. So, police got a warrant to search the Hawthorne estate, which is the 78-acre estate the Woods family lived on in Portola Valley. And in the young man's room, they found journals, a draft of the ransom demand, maps, notes, plans, receipts for the vans and the trailer, false ID, one of the guns used in the kidnapping, the hamburger wrapper on which were written the names and ages of the children. The notes laid out how they wanted the money dropped in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and they would pick it up under cover of darkness. And then they rented a storage unit in their own names, and they found the vans. And warrants, of course, were issued. 8 days later, Richard Schoenfeld voluntarily surrendered. Then James Schoenfeld was arrested in Menlo Park, which is in San Francisco. Later that same day, Woods was arrested by the RCMP in Vancouver. Unbelievable. These three were, thank goodness they weren't very smart. That's all I'm going to say. They said, quote, "We needed multiple victims to get multiple millions, and we picked children because children are precious. The state would be willing to pay ransom for them." State? What kind of idiots are you? And they don't fight back. They're vulnerable. They will mind. All three pled guilty. To kidnapping for ransom and robbery, but didn't enter a plea for infliction of bodily harm, which was a charge that was later overturned. They hadn't actually inflicted any bodily harm, just mental harm. They were resentenced at that point to life with the possibility of parole. Richard Schoenfeld was released in 2012. James was paroled in 2015. Woods was running several businesses from behind closed doors, from behind prison walls, I should say. In 2016, a workers' compensation lawsuit was filed. And Woods inherited $100 million, $131 million in today's money. And he is not out. Oh yes, he was granted parole in August of 2022. And the Schoenfelds were paroled in 2012 and 2015, respectively. The kids had a lot of problems. In fact, one of them got scared of a tourist that broke down in front of his home, shot him with a BB gun. They suffered substance abuse, depression. A number of them had gone to jail themselves for, quote, doing something controlling to somebody else. In 2016, the 25 surviving victims, because by that time Ed had passed away, settled the lawsuit they had filed against their kidnappers. The money they received was paid out of Frederick Wood's trust fund. Oh, good. And although the exact amount of the settlement was not disclosed, one survivor stated that they had each received enough to pay for some serious therapy, but not enough for a house. Okay. Governor Gavin Newsom had asked the parole board when they were going to parole Woods to reconsider. But they wouldn't. There was a parade to celebrate their escape, and February 26th, Ray's birthday, is Edward Ray Day. And they renamed their local park as Edward Ray Park. He died May 17, 2012. He was visited when he was dying by the children, most of them. He received a California School Employees Association citation for outstanding community service. And this is them in the parade. Yeah, they had a lot of problems. And I actually saw a documentary, which I'm going to try to link on this case. So, thank you so much for joining me. These are cautionary tales. Let's not forget them. Let's not repeat them. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something. I was only 2 years old when this happened. Well, I turned 2 the following month. There was also a movie about this case. Try to link that too. Both were really good. So I do recommend them for more intricate details, like the names of all of the victims, things like that. I think the majority of them are still alive. The oldest would be 24 and 86, 34 and 96, 44 and 06, 54 and 16. So 63 years old. So the youngest are 54 to 55. So thank you so much for joining me. God bless you. Thank you that we're only 3 or 4 away from our goal. We will get it by Labor Day. Bye, guys. God bless you.